Hey Kipsters, happy Wednesday. Now, today in Read Aloud, we are going to get to read a brand new book all about a little boy who finds a type of seed. And for the last 2 days, you have been learning all about seeds and plants and how they grow. Now, the boy is going to find a type of bean, which we learned yesterday is a seed for a fruit or vegetable, and he's going to plant it, and something crazy is going to happen. Before we do that, we need to talk about first graders in training. A first grader in training is someone who is really reading closely and answering tricky questions. Today, when we read our new story, I'm going to look for some future first graders out there who are super fantastic at looking closely at the text and answering tricky questions. Before we read, I want to know, have you ever planted something? What happened? Ooh, I hear some friends have planted seeds, some friends have planted flowers, and if you haven't planted before, that is okay. Today, when we read, we're going to practice identifying the setting. Remember, the setting is where and when the story takes place. Now, future first graders are so good at identifying the setting because they look at the pictures and the words in a text to help them identify where is the character? When is it? So let's play a setting game. What is the setting? You got it, the shoe store. What is the setting? Oh my gosh, I wish we could go here all together. The water park. What is the setting? Yes, the pizza shop. Now today we're going to read this book called Jack and the Beanstalk. And this book is about a boy who finds a special seed from a vegetable and he plants it. And when we read today, we're going to think about where and when the story takes place. So I'm going to be asking you questions about where is the boy and when is it, like daytime, nighttime, things like that. Let's get started, Kipsters. Jack and the Beanstalk by Richard Walker, Niamh Sharkey, and Richard Hope. Oh, I can't wait to see what happens. Jack and the Beanstalk. I'm not going to start by saying that Jack was lazy. When there was an adventure in the offing, he was not lazy at all. But most of the time, he did just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Jack lived with his mom and Daisy the cow in a tumble-down farmhouse a little way out of town. Jack's mom liked to do just a little bit of this and a little bit of that as well. They didn't have very much money, but they didn't much care. Where do Jack and his mom live? What is the setting of where they live? Yeah, they live in a house. We're going to listen more closely to the words to find out exactly where they live. Jack lived with his mom and Daisy the cow in a tumble-down farmhouse a little way out of town. So they live in a farmhouse. That's what the words told us. And they live a little way out of town. So not like in the big city or near a lot of people. Then one day there was nothing left to eat. Not even a crust of old bread. And no money left either to buy anything. Ugh, it's no good, Jack, his mom said. We'll have to sell poor old Daisy. You had better get up early tomorrow morning to take her to market. Make sure you get a good price for her. Jack knew better than to argue. Besides, he was very hungry. So the next day he got up at sunrise and set off down the lane with Daisy in tow. He had not gone far when he came around a corner and bumped into a funny little man. The man was wearing a big baggy jacket with big baggy pockets. "Good morning to you," said the man. "That's a nice looking cow you have there. Do you fancy a swap for her?" Swap. Swap, that's the same as trade. Jack remembered what his mom had told him, so he asked, "What will you give me in exchange?" "These," declared the funny little man, and plunging a hand deep into one of his pockets, he pulled out 6 plump beans. "Those?" asked Jack. "Yes," said the funny little man, "these. Don't think these are just ordinary beans." "Oh, no, 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 these are magic beans. But you will have to be careful with them. I've lost the instructions for them, so I'm not sure what they do." Well, there was nothing Jack loved better than magic. So he handed over Daisy, took the beans, and hurried home. Oh man, you guys. So Jack's mom told Jack to swap Daisy for some food. What did he do instead? Yeah, he swapped her for some magic beans. Is that going to be enough? Is that going to be enough for them to eat? No way. What do you think, Jack? What do you think the magic beans will do? Really? Oh, we gotta keep reading to find out. As soon as he reached the back door, Jack burst into the kitchen and proudly threw the beans down on the table. "What's this?" exclaimed his mom. "Oh dear," thought Jack. They're magic beans, Mom. I swapped them for Daisy. At least we've got something to eat." "Well, we will have when they've grown." Jack's mom was furious. Make a furious face. She went white in the face and shouted and stamped. Then she threw open the window and flung the beans outside. Whoosh. That night, Jack and his mom went to bed feeling miserable and hungry. I wonder what's going to happen to those beans. But in the garden, things began to happen. The beans slipped down through the cracks in the ground. Their roots wriggled deep into the earth, and shoots pushed up. Whoa, look, shoots are pushing up right here. I lost my spot, my friends. They burst through the hard crust of the soil, and, twisting and tangling together, they grew high into the sky. They kept on growing and growing until they reached the land of the clouds. Kipsters, what happened to these beans overnight? That's right. They fell into the ground. They dug down roots. They pushed up shoots through the earth, and they started growing. Whoa. Then a long, wiry tendril reached down to the house and tapped on Jack's bedroom window. "Oh, who's that?" Jack yawned. He saw strange shadows in the moonlit window, and, not sure whether this was a dream or a real adventure, he padded across the room and drew back his curtains. There, bending and swaying in the moonlight, was the most enormous beanstalk he had ever seen. Look, it's taller than their farmhouse. "I wonder where the top of it goes to," Jack said to himself. There was only one way to find out. Without stopping to think twice, he clambered over the windowsill and started to climb. Soon, the house was just a tiny dot far below. Still, he made his way upward. Oh my gosh, so you guys, Jack climbed out of his bed in the middle of the night, climbed up the beanstalk that's taller than his farmhouse to see what was at the top. Finally, he reached the land of the clouds and stepped off of the beanstalk onto the fluffy gray ground. In the distance, he could see a huge castle. Wow. Jack walked straight up to it and knocked on the door. He heard the clank of keys being turned, the rumble of bars being slid back, and the rattle of chains being unfastened. Then at last the huge door creaked open a crack, and he saw a little old woman peering at him by the light of a candle. Kipsters, how has the setting changed? Think about where and when the story is taking place. Are they still at the farmhouse? No. Where is Jack now? That's right, he's in the land of the clouds by the castle. And I want you to think now about when. Is it still daytime? No, it's night. I can tell it's night because I see dark sky, I see stars in the sky, and I see the moon. Those details in the illustration tell me it's nighttime. Let's see what happens when he goes in that castle. "You can't come in," she whispered. "He'll be back soon. Go away." "Please," Jack begged. "I'm a stranger here and starving hungry. Can't I just pop in for something to eat?" The woman looked at him more closely and saw that he was a nice-looking lad with a ready smile. "Very well, you can come in for a minute," she said, "but don't let him catch sight of you." Gosh, who is going to be in that castle? "Who's he?" asked Jack as they made their way along the dusty castle corridors to the big kitchen. Lining the wall were mounds of huge bulging sacks, which jingled as Jack brushed against them. The giant, of course. If he catches you, he'll eat you for sure. He's got a foul temper, so you'd better keep out of his way. Hide among the sacks if you hear him coming. Then, just as she finished speaking, there was a crashing of heavy footsteps outside the room. Boom, boom, boom. Jack only managed to hide behind a heap of sacks when the door burst open, and in barged the giant. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of a stinky man. Where is he, woman? Where are you hiding him?" The giant sniffed his way around the room until he came close to where Jack was hiding. "Oh, don't be silly," said the old woman. "All you can smell is the stew I've made. I was trying a bowl of it to make sure it was good enough for you. Would you like some?" Soon the giant had slurped his way through an enormous bowl of stew. He belched loudly, then demanded, "Fetch me my goose. I want some more gold." The old woman slipped out of the room and was soon back, cradling a huge, very glooming-looking bird in her arm. Peeping out from his hiding place, Jack watched as the goose began to lay eggs, each one made of pure gold. As each egg appeared, the giant put it into a giant egg box. Then he demanded, "Now fetch me my harp. I want some music." Once again, the old woman bustled out of the room and came back holding an exquisite harp made of pure gold. Even the strings were golden. "Play, harp, play!" shouted the giant. And as if by magic, the room was filled with the most beautiful, gentle music, as the strings began to vibrate all by themselves. Soon the giant fell asleep, and his snuffling and snorting echoed around the room. Jack crept out from his hiding place and quietly began to drag one of the bulging sacks, full of gold coins, around the kitchen. It was very heavy, and it jingled as he pulled it, but the giant didn't stir. There we go. Jack heaved and dragged the sack right out of the castle, across the cloud, and back to the top of the beanstalk. The sack was too heavy for him to carry any further, so he left it there and slid quickly down. You guys, why does Jack want the bag of gold coins? Oh, because maybe he could get some food for him and Mom? Okay, let's see what happens when he slides down. When he reached home, Jack found his mom staring up at the beanstalk and scratching her head. "Rope!" cried Jack as he sprang to the ground. He ran off to the shed and came back a few moments later with heavy coils wrapped around him. Then he set off back up the beanstalk. At the top of the beanstalk, Jack tied one end of the rope to the stem and the other end to the sack of gold. Then he started to lower the sack. After a while, he felt the rope become loose, and he knew that the sack had reached the ground safely and that his mom had untied it. Jack headed back to the kitchen to fetch another sack. As he crept past the giant, the goose looked up hopefully and whispered, "Can I come too?" "I hate it up here. You wouldn't need to take the sack then. I could lay as many golden eggs as you want." So Jack picked her up and ran out of the room. In the corridor, he bumped into the old woman. "Can I come with you as well?" she asked. "Of course," said Jack. "Here, you take the goose and I'll go back up for the harp." But as Jack picked up the harp, it suddenly cried out, What's going on? Who are you? Help, help!" Jack raced out of the kitchen just as the giant woke up, saw what was happening, and began to give chase, faster and faster. ran Jack. Closer and closer came the giant. As he reached the top of the beanstalk, Jack could feel the giant's hand on the hairs of his neck. The old woman started slithering down with the goose. Jack slithered down behind her with the harp. They could hear the giant shouting and swearing as he tried to follow them. "Quick!" he shouted. The beanstalk bent and swayed wildly, first to the left and then to the right, but the old woman and Jack reached the ground safely. Whew. Jack grabbed the rope. He pulled and pulled until he could see the giant hanging on for dear life, glaring at him. Then he let go. Boing! The beanstalk shot upright like an enormous catapult. Unable to hold on any longer, the giant flew off the end. He soared away into space and was never seen again. And as far as I know, he's still there. Kipsters, how does Jack escape from this giant? Let's go back to this page. How does he escape? Look at that rope. Yeah, he pulls the rope with the giant on top, and as he pulls it this way and lets go, the giant flies that way, and he gets flung off the beanstalk into space. You did an awesome job identifying the setting, where and when the story takes place. I have 2 questions to ask you before we say goodbye. What setting does the illustration show? A, the beanstalk, B, the castle, or C, the garden? Think in your brain, A, B, or C. What setting does the illustration show? A, the beanstalk, B, the castle, or C, the garden? Yeah, the garden. You've got it. That is choice C. Last question. Where does Jack bring the sack of gold? A, down the beanstalk, B, into the castle, or C, to the garden? What place does Jack bring the sack of gold to? Yeah, he brings it down the beanstalk. He doesn't bring it to the castle, that's where he got it. And he doesn't bring it to the garden, that's where the beans and the beanstalk grow. Kipsters, you did a fantastic job identifying the setting when we read Jack and the Beanstalk. We're going to read this book one more time tomorrow. I can't wait to see you then. Bye, Kipsters.